talk about how to win in an open market, and there's lots of different subsections to this subject. But I guess in taking over an open market listing, I guess what we've got to do is we've got to be upfront consultative with our clients. So a couple of key questions you really want to ask before you start positioning script on this. The first is, why do you believe the premises hasn't leased? So it's really asking the question of the owner why they believe it hasn't leased, and to really listen to those answers. The other question that I would be asking is, the agents that have been representing you, why do they believe it hasn't leased? It's a different type of a question, and a really important one for you to establish how you're going to position signing up exclusively. And what you're going to hear is a whole range of answers like, oh, they just haven't been taking people here, they haven't been trying, they had someone but then they lost them, I haven't seen them, I'm not hearing from communication. And what you've got to do is link all those answers back to, well, it sounds to me that the property is leasable, it's just that you don't have anyone that's responsible for your listing. And off the back of that word responsibility is important. The question I'd ask them is, in their business, who has the most to lose? And so in their business, who has skin in the game? And they would say themselves. And I'd be asking questions like, so if you all went out tonight and let's just say, I don't know, it was a Christmas party and you're in a situation where you all had a few drinks and we're all working tomorrow, who'd be the person that turned up first? Would it be you or the receptionist? That's exactly right, it'd be you. And it's getting them to understand that no one's actually being held accountable to this thing. And so what often happens is not just accountability and responsibility, but it's also the way that people see it is, or the agents are seeing it, is they're not going to get a return on effort because there are 1/5 chance of actually leasing or selling the property. So therefore you get 1/5 of the effort. Now what we know about this market is you don't want 1/5 of the effort, you need 5 out of 5, you need 110% effort. And the way in which you do that is you sign an exclusivity. Now I think it's really important that once you go through that, why do you think it hasn't leased or sold, or why does the agent think it hasn't leased or sold, it's really important to then go into your strategy and to simply say, look, based on what you've told me over here, can I show you how we counteract that? And that's when you would begin to start discussing your process of how you actually sign the property up. So what you want to also do is explain how detrimental the open market is to the value of the asset. And so explaining to them that the longer the property remains on the market, listed, relisted, the less value it's worth long term. And you've got to remember, a lot of the businesses in and around the asset, they're all there long term. So they'll remember that one that sat on the market for a year or two. And you watch in every single, whether it's a shopping mall, whether it's a shopping strip, there are always 3 or 4 shops or sites that forever have been haunted by a mismanaged property that's gone to the market. And what we know is that the longer the property stays on the market, the less it's worth in the eye of the consumer. So timing relates to price. And as I mentioned before, in that pricing, you could have someone that turns up day 2, which is when we want them to turn up, that sees the property, that because it's day 2, they will be compelled to pay near asking price. They'll be compelled to sign a lease at what you've pitched it at. But that same person that's looking at it 6 months down the track, even though they need it just as much, what that's going to mean is that they will be starting their negotiation a lot lower. So we're going to be in a position not to fully realise the value of that property. And so the other thing we need to think about as well is when you've got multiple agents working the same property, it's not just about you getting 5 lots of effort. In fact, what actually happens is when we do source that tenant, the tenant online quite quickly will know, and through all of the signs up the front will know that there are 5 people working on it. They will individually go to all those 5. And what they're going to try and do is get the very best deal. Now mark my word, the deal that you're going to hear is going to be the one that's the lowest. And so really what this is all about, it's not about a fight to the top, it's about a fight to the lowest lease. One that I'm always really, really big on is looking a client in the eye and just saying, let me be responsible. And what I would ask of you to do is to simply try this, particularly if you haven't had that client or that client hasn't listed through you before, is just to look the client in the eye and say this. You know, take yourself back to the first job, Mr. or Mrs. Client, that you ever got. Can I ask you, what was your first job you ever got? And how did you actually go for that job, and what happened when you got accepted in that job? Oh really, it was delivering milk in your local milk delivery. How did you actually feel when you got that job? Yeah? How hard did you work when you got given that opportunity? Yep. This is exactly the position I find myself with you now. Give me that opportunity to show that I can do this. Give me that opportunity to put all my energy, all my enthusiasm, all my knowledge into this campaign. I will treat it with the respect, the same respect you treated your first job that you ever got. And so what I also want you to get across to this particular vendor on this, this open market listing is to simply say this. It's to say, look, I joined this particular agency that you're at 2 years ago, 6 months ago, 5 years ago. And what I actually did was I did what you did, and I actually shopped all agencies. And can I actually explain to you why I settled on the agency that I work for? At that point, what you want to do is reflect back 2 years ago in your career when you chose to work for your agency. Why did you choose to work for them? What was it that you saw in them that made you want to work for them? And that's the sort of stuff that you want to, at that point of the conversation, shoot across to your client. So that would lead into something like, Mr. and Mrs. Client, why I worked here was because of A, B, C, D, or E. Now, one might argue I've got a little bit more to lose than you in this. Obviously, you've got to get as much for your property as you possibly can and get the best quality tenant or the best quality buyer. For me, I've got my whole career. So I did exactly what you did 2 years ago. I shopped all agencies, and the reason why I settled on ABC Real Estate is because of these reasons. And I think that in itself is going to help you engage at a different level. So often from the perspective of the client, it's that they may have multiple relationships with all agents and they're not wanting to let go of that. And I guess the thing that I would be tackling on that is what's in the best interest of the property? And in some ways, what are they obligated to? Are they obligated to the best interest of the property, or are they obligated to all the agents? Who are they most loyal to? And these are the sorts of questions that I'd be asking. Is it the property, and the property then funds the wealth of the family, or are you obligated to the agents and the relationships? Now, the problem with being obligated to all is that you don't get the response that you really need. You don't get the effort and the responsibility, as we said before, that you need. Now, what's also interesting about having your listing shared by everyone is that even if that agent had a red hot buyer, ask yourself the question, are they going to bring that red hot buyer or that red hot tenant through your property that is open listed? Or are they going to take that red hot buyer and take them to their exclusive campaigns? What I know about all of our red hot buyers is we certainly take them through our exclusive campaigns. So even if you do get a tenant or a buyer, be safe to say it won't be their best. And if it is, it'll be a recycled buyer that certainly won't have as deeper pockets. So the other thing we need to be talking to our clients about with the open market listing is the fact that it's not just about the marketing, it's not just how you're going to treat the online inquiry, but it's also going to them with a prospecting campaign. Print out all the businesses, all of the local networking people that you network with, talk all the tenants, all the people that you're going to prospect to, show them that prospecting list and explain to them, if we do the exclusivity, see all these people here, and there's 185 of them, I will ring and report on what every single one says in a report back to you. Each one of those phone calls will be minimum 5 to 7 minutes. Add up all of the time that you're going to spend on the campaign if you get exclusivity. So I think the combining of that prospecting and that proactive prospecting and the printing out a list of those clients, along with the marketing and how you're going to treat it, combine to you getting that tenant or you getting the sale of their property that they would never have seen without those efforts.